voice of yoga.
Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
Well, I'm doing great today, too. Thanks for asking. And we'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we will talk about Matthew 7:8. I'll read it. For everyone that asks receives, and he that seeks finds, and to him that knocks it shall be opened. End of the verse. Listen as we explore the difference between human conjecture and spiritual truth. In this episode, we will explain what it looks like when asking, seeking, and knocking are done spiritually instead of humanly. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and be heard. So the title of today's episode is Knocking with the Thunder of Silence. Well, I really like that phrase, thunder of silence. What can you tell our listeners about this title?
Yeah, the Bible states, ask in my name, and it shall be given. And today we'll look at what is meant by my name. And we take our clue from the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Hallow means holy, and holy means spiritual. As we've learned in physics, like attracts like. To ask, we must know ourselves in the way we are known, which is spiritual. How does spirit seek? Spirit is one, eternal, perfect, and whole. It's everywhere, always. And so, as it says in the Isha Upanishad, it remains still and outstrips all that run. Spirit seeks by remaining still, in stillness. How does spirit knock? The language of spirit is silence, and because spirit is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, it has the thunder of silence. Nothing has to be added to or taken away ever. Rest in the truth of one perfect divine life, without change or opposition. So today we'll talk about this idea of ask, seek, and knock.
So let's take those three, ask, seek, and knock, and let's talk about the difference of each of those words with the human conjecture and spiritual truth assigned to each. Let's start with the ask.
Yeah, I think the way that we have been socialized through Orthodox religion, we're asking God to do things for us. Prayer, I remember, was asking God or talking to God, and meditation was listening to God. But for us to be asking God, we must be out of spiritual identity, because as spirit, we're one. There's only one spirit, one life, and it's the life of God. It's everywhere, always. If we're asking for anything, it's an indicator that I'm in the wrong self, the personal sense of self. As we've learned, if we identify with the form, if we believe in two powers, we're out of divine consciousness. And as a result, things are missing. Why? Because nothing is whole at the human level. And for us to make this shift in identity from a mental material basis, which is dualistic, into spiritual, which is whole and complete, there's some tampering that has to happen.
So just a question here. So if somebody is praying to God because they're looking to have relief from a headache, and it happens, they have a relief from a headache. So what would you say to them if they prayed and they had this experience?
Well, in that situation, if you ask God to fix your headache, you're really working under material law, karmic law. First of all, you believe that you have a physical body and you believe it's in pain, which is all belief. Now, the entire human experience is a belief. It's a hypnotic state. And you can change finite bad to finite good with thought and belief. That's what the medical model survives on, is this idea of the placebo effect. But to do things scientifically, spiritually, you need a principle and a rule. And if you do not understand that spirit is perfect, whole, complete, changeless, everywhere, always, then you don't have a principle. So you would ask for help in that situation. But if you know the truth, if you are conscious of the divine creation, then you walk in the kingdom of heaven on earth. But if you don't know the truth, then you walk defenseless among these non-existent powers that seem to do harm.
Swami, let's take the word seek. He that seeks finds. So what would be the difference between human conjecture and spiritual truth regarding that?
Yeah, the human is looking outside itself for what it thinks it's missing. Why? Because the entire human experience is incomplete. That's why the concept was to transform. To experience total consciousness or wholeness, we had to transform. And if you're in form, you're not eligible to receive divine inspiration. And when we identify with the form, then things are missing, or they seem to be missing. And we're asking for completion. But as spirit rests, it's still, it's perfect, it's whole, and it understands itself to be perfect and whole. So when the Bible says, ask in my name, it's really a trick question. If you are perfect, whole, and complete, what is it that you would be asking for?
So let's take that last one. And to him that knocks, it shall be opened. So what would be the difference between human conjecture and spiritual truth regarding knocking?
Well, of course, the human thinks he's on the outside, and there's a barrier between themselves and whatever it is that they think they need to complete themselves. And so we're banging on the door. We're asking for help. But as spirit, you're resting in silence and in stillness. Be still and know that I am God. It's very different when you're doing things humanly and you're trying, striving, struggling, seeking, planning, you're asking, as opposed to when you're doing things spiritually, you're resting in the knowledge. You know the truth. God is running a perfect universe, and I and the Father are one. So what would it be that I would be asking for if I was perfect, whole, complete, changeless, without any opposition?
So if we take the title of the show, Knocking with the Thunder of Silence, we're talking about knocking with this divine self that we are a part of.
Yeah, even the language we use to say, I am a part of the divine self is incorrect. There's only one life, and it's perfect, whole, it's complete. There's not me, you, and everybody else, and the Supreme Being. That's more of the orthodox religious concept we've been socialized with. The idea of one being, one life, gives you the principle. And the more you can educate your thought up to spiritual apprehension, the easier it is for us to go through the stages in development required before we can walk reason through the open door of revelation.
We have a passage here from Joel Goldsmith from his work, The Heart of Mysticism, and I'll read it. Is there an activity apart from God? Is there a mind apart from God? Is there a life apart from God? Is there a law apart from God? There are no other gods but one, and that one is the I am of your being and of my being. And when a rumor comes to you of a selfhood apart from God, you must be alert enough to look right at the Christ of God and know that Christ is the only identity of individual being. Only that realization constitutes an individual who is set apart from mortal beliefs. Only one who has, in some measure, realized that Christ is individual identity, that each individual is the child of God, can say, what power is there in such rumors or beliefs? Let us therefore ask and seek and knock for more spiritual light, more spiritual wisdom, more spiritual consciousness. Let us always remember that we can pray, ask, seek, knock, as long as it is for something not of this world, because this world cannot be demonstrated spiritually. End of this passage. Swami, any thoughts about what I've just read?
Yeah, I really like what he said here about this world cannot be demonstrated spiritually. It's very important to understand the nature of error, the nothingness of anything unlike the divine creation. It's just a concept. It's a belief or a reflection. I really like that term, reflection. And so there's one being, one perfect being, and everything else is a reflection of it. But you have to understand that a reflection is not real. Just like when you look at yourself in the mirror, the image looking back at you, there's no life, truth, intelligence, or substance in that reflection. And so what we're doing is we're reacting to what isn't there. And I really like the way Martha Wilcox explained this. She said it's like looking at a white horse with green glasses, and the horse appears to be green. Now, of course, you couldn't go about it by trying to remove the green from the horse, which is what we do when we go and we examine a physical body because it's imperfect in some way. We don't want to remove the imperfection from what isn't there. We want to remove the mind that is creating the imperfection, just like you would remove the green from the horse by removing the glasses. And so learning this idea of how to think differently, how to stop thinking with the mortal mind, directly associated with the information coming through your corporeal senses, and begin knowing with 7 spiritual senses. And then, of course, we have the capacity to know the truth. And then, like he says, demonstrate the divine image and likeness.
So I have a question about a phrase I just read from Joel Goldsmith. And he says to be alert enough to look right at the Christ of God and know that Christ is the only identity of individual being. What does he mean by that phrase, Christ of God?
Yeah, this is what I think is important. Christ has oftentimes been misunderstood as being Jesus. Jesus equals Christ. Christ is the Messiah. Christ is the saving aspect of truth. What makes the divine creation comprehensive to human consciousness? So Christ reveals the truth. Without the Christ, there's no way of us knowing the truth. That's why in the Bible where Paul talks about the mind of Christ, the mind of Christ perceives the divine creation, the perfection of being. The carnal mind or the mortal mind, human mind, sees the mental material veil which is not the divine creation. And so it's important to be able to separate the wheat from the tares. And until we develop the faculty called the mind of Christ, until we graduate from thinking with 5 corporeal senses to knowing with 7 spiritual senses, we can walk by faith, not by sight, because the thing that you will learn is divine truth in consciousness resolves things into thoughts and exchanges the objects of sense for the divine idea. And your belief in divine truth can graduate to faith. Faith is where your belief in divine truth begins to appear in your corporeal senses. And your faith then can graduate to understanding, where you're now demonstrating divine law with scientific certainty.
We're going to pause right here to hear a word from our sponsor. Listeners, will be back with you in just a few moments. Kriya Yoga Theory 1, Human Development and 8 Essential Stages of Kriya Yoga. This program is a comprehensive course that will help you get your arms around the science of Kriya Yoga. It provides a clear understanding of the goals and objectives behind yoga, along with the physics of spirituality. It includes the practices, supportive concepts of Kriya Yoga, and the process in human development, apotheosis, the process of the human becoming divine. A complete guide on how to become a human in the adult state. Get the light in your soul and experience the simplicity and joy of union with the divine. This course is available in live classes at the ashram or online with 8 videos or 4 CDs. Visit our website, www.ipdtransform.com, for more information. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. Swami, you had mentioned the phrase earlier, ask in my name, and maybe we could just dive a little deeper into what that means.
Yeah, like we said, my name means my likeness. And so we must know ourselves in the way that we are known by spirit, which is spiritual. As for seek and knock, the language of spirit is silence. The activity is stillness. So be still and know I am God. Spirit isn't looking for anything, and in reality, God can't give us anything because God isn't withholding anything. God is running a perfect universe, and it is us who are unconscious to the activity of the divine principle. And as long as we continue to react to the mental material concept, the false sense of existence, we violate spiritual law. We're out of the Father's house. Everything that we're doing here now is how do we get back into the divine consciousness, back into the Father's house?
So, Swami, what would we have to do to get back into the Father's house?
Yeah, the process of shifting identity from mental material to spiritual includes the initiation of the developmental process, beginning with rebirthing the body in the invisible, intangible, omnipresent spirit. Mortal mind goes through 3 stages of growth by initiating this process. To break the unconscious, involuntary consent to accepting mortality. If we continue to live instinctually, we chronologically age, psychologically, spiritually remain in this underdeveloped state. For us to grow, some tampering has to happen. And it's going to unfold in 3 phases if you follow it. Stage 1 is accomplished when the body is taught to serve spirit and not duality, to sow to the spirit and not the flesh as the symbol for validation. There's no fear in spirit because there's no death in spirit.
So, Swami, when you said the body is taught to serve spirit, what is that involved to teach the body to serve spirit?
Yeah, you literally have to purify the body of the pattern it comes in with. The body comes in with programming. When we incarnate, the body looks for food, mother, approval, for validation. And it has to be changed. We have to literally change the reward circuits in the brain. You purge the body of its dependency on particles and waves, and then you internalize the invisible, intangible spirit as your symbol for validation. It's done successfully when you reformat your value system. You know the difference between what we would call a need and a want. And then in Kriya Yoga, we use what's called pranayama, the science of prana. Prana is spirit. Spirit follows your number one life-sustaining force, thought. And thought can be regulated and measured with life-sustaining force number 2, breath, because your rate of breath equals your rate of thought. You can begin to learn how to control how you think, also change the symbol you use to produce a feeling in the body that you're okay. This is what the Bible calls born again of spirit. Only it's not just a phrase. It's not just an academic accomplishment. It's got physics involved. And when you internalize spirit as your symbol for validation, then you initiate this progressive cycle. And then we can move into stage 2.
Swami, so what does stage 2 entail?
Yeah, stage 2 begins when fear is allayed and consciousness is freed from instinct and survival, these defense mechanisms. Now, intelligence can be developed into 4 mental functions: perception, reason, memory, intuition, to assist in decision-making based on sense-level awareness. All of this is still working with the mortal mind. You're still working with duality. The stage in development where the individual is no longer reactive and emotional, but has the capacity to make intelligent decisions. In Kriya Yoga, this would be what we would call pratyahara, sense withdrawal, that you're now no longer operating from unconscious patterns and conditioned responses, but you're now using your mental functions.
Swami, so explain to us what stage 3 would entail.
Yes, stage 3 is employing human intelligence to overcome this world, or the influence of corporeal sense in human consciousness, what the Bible called the son of perdition. Once we have overcome this world, we can then walk reason through the open door of revelation by stopping thinking with 5 corporeal senses and start knowing with 7 spiritual senses. To expand on the how-to, it's crucial to know how to resolve a physical body into a mental image capable of receiving divine inspiration, which then precedes the ability to let divine mind exchange the objects of sense for the divine idea. It works kind of like this. You're conscious of the divine creation. Your realization of the divine creation is an initial stage. Then there's this 2-part authentication, where divine mind acknowledges itself as you, which would be called the sanctification. And then finally, the revelation, which is when you are now that place where divine mind is revealing its perfect creation through you.
We have a verse here from Matthew 8:34 to 37, and I'll read them. Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, the same shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? End of the verses. Swami, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, the purpose of incarnation is to know the truth. Life is purely spiritual, eternal, perfect, and changeless. Truth dissolves the belief in error and reveals the kingdom at hand. And I have something here from Herb Fitch, Thunder of Silence, Class 14b, and I'll read it. Now, all of your asking then, all of your seeking, and all of your knocking that is not in my name is disobedience to the simple truth of being. Only what ye shall ask in my name, and we have identified the voice that speaks these words as Christ, not a man, but the Spirit of God in you. Whatever ye shall do in my name, whatever ye shall seek, ask, or knock for in my name, you must be in that identity, in that spiritual selfhood, for the revelation of truth to make itself known to you. Just as a human cannot pray to spirit, spirit cannot answer a human. The reality cannot answer the counterfeit. The counterfeit cannot contact the reality. And you're learning that your physical self is a counterfeit of your real self. You are an imitation of yourself. That is why we are being introduced to the Comforter, to the teacher within. If ye shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. That is inviolable divine law. The inner knower of you will do anything when you have yielded your personal self, which is asking in my name. End of quote. Once we have given up the personal sense of self, we have mastered the mind-body complex to some degree, then the next stage in development is sanctification. Herb talks about this in Thunder of Silence in Class 19b.
And I'll read it. This is in Revelations 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him and he with me. End of the verse. If any man hears my voice, the still small voice stands right outside your consciousness, knocking, waiting for you to say, I hear you, I acknowledge your presence, I acknowledge infinity at my consciousness, waiting for me to let it in, waiting for me to drop the false sense of me that is opening the door, and then infinity will sup with you, will share its infinite table with you, and from the far ends of the universe, all that is needed, all of the divine qualities of the Father must flow in and through you performing their divine function where you stand. End of the passage. Swami, your thoughts here?
Yeah, and of course that brings you to the next stage, which is revelation, where you are now demonstrating divine law with scientific certainty, which is what we're really aspiring to do. This idea of knowing the truth that makes us free from the belief in two powers, the belief in a finite mortal sense of existence.
So I thank you for your insights for today's episode titled Knocking with the Thunder of Silence. Listeners, be sure to visit the website www.ipdtransform.com. On any of the pages as you scroll down, you'll see several buttons that you could press to further your understanding. Swami, any final thoughts about today's podcast?
Well, I would like to encourage people to join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance, get the light in your soul, and be heard. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga realization. Namaste.